Communists are a real problem. Cultural Marxism is a genuine problem. I am surprised you would question its authenticity. How can you be so blind?
Well, welcome back, everyone. Was that intro confusing to you? It should have been. Seems like it came out of left field, out of nowhere. That was a response to the video, or the beginning of a response to the video that I made called "You Might Be a Communist." And that particular video was about how the idea of cultural Marxism and communism coming, we're in this sort of situation where anything that comes from the left is almost automatically dibbed or dubbed as cultural Marxism or communistic, and that's just not the truth. I went through Gramsci. He's known as the godfather of communism. He wrote the manifesto on cultural Marxism, and what they look for and what the idea behind it was to create homogeny. Like Russell Brand, when he said, "The world would be much better if everyone just thought the same." That's homogeny. Religion can be a form of this. Globalism can be a form of this. Fascism is a form of this. Granting people rights, liberties, and freedoms is not part of the cultural Marxist manifesto. It's nowhere in there. Nowhere. It does talk about using the Democrat or liberal political structure within Western civilizations to infiltrate them to spread the idea of communism. And Gramsci did not even like socialism. Gramsci and other communists like him were not a fan of communism. They thought of it, the understanding I have, that the way that they looked at socialism, the communists did, is that it was basically like a fake way of yeah, we're introducing communism, but not really. So it's like a pseudo communistic aspect or pseudo cultural Marxism. Now, I'm not saying that cultural Marxism and communism are in fact conspiracy theories. I mean, yes, they did make a manifesto where they tried to, where the idea behind cultural Marxism is to infest the rest of the world with communism, including Western civilizations. But they even admitted that trying to get it here in Western civilizations, especially countries like the United States, would be extremely difficult because of the way that our government is set up. And especially that we have social safety nets within the country. If you don't believe we have social safety nets in the United States, what do you think Social Security is? It says it right there in the name. And I mean, we all benefit from that. That's not what the communists were going for. So it's a quid pro quo, as it was put to me, of the Communist Manifesto or cultural Marxism. So my response to this was, communism is a problem, and there was a lot of typos. I'm going to fix the typos in my language, but I'm not going to fix the typos in my response because fuck it. So communism is a problem if we are to live in it. We do not live in communism, and if you think we do, why? I'm talking to someone who says gay rights is cultural Marxism, to which I've proven it is not. That doesn't say it in there. I'm saying it doesn't. Granting people's rights, liberties, and freedom is an aspect of democracy, not communism. Communism is do as I say or be tortured and killed. It's basically like saying, you're wrong and I'm right because I have a gun. It's homogeny. They're looking for homogeny. And see, fascism can be a part of that, but fascism wants homogeny through homogeneity, which is interesting. But then I ask, where is it happening in the United States? How is it granting liberties and or rights? How is granting liberties, rights to people via education using philosophy, facts, logic, and evidence based on a popular consensus authoritarian? I'm sorry, there's things that are popular you don't like, but that doesn't equate to fascism nor communism. That's just something called change. Now, hopefully, the ideas of communism and fascism do not become popular. That would be frightening. The authoritarian left does need to sit down and stop being assholes by trying to control everyone, but the same goes to the alt-right. The only communist anything right now the right and the left need to be worrying about, and this goes across all Western civilizations. China is really, really creating a problem. Is about China's growing influence over us, and I put that in lowercase because it's not just the U.S., it's UK, European countries that they're doing it to. They're buying up sums of land and starting to control narratives and stuff. China can go fuck itself, and I hope they have an uprising of civil rights over there and demolish the communist dictatorship that has been reigning over them for years. And then I went on to say, I don't think, and I think that there's some comments that have been made by this person that have been retracted. So I think this is responding to one of those comments. I said, I don't think that's how that works, but I'll look into it. And then I said, what you are talking about is the difference between equality and privilege. I do not wish to bully people to accept anything. You have the right to dislike and hate, but being that we live in this country together, then tolerance, not acceptance, is asked. For instance, I don't like religion. I am not mean to religious people, but I do attack the idea of religion and try to persuade people away from it. This does not mean I do not have Christian friends that I disagree with, but we are not going to kill each other or bully each other because of said disagreement. This would be tolerance on my part. Ergo, I do not accept theology as a nihilist, but I do tolerate it. Let's be civilized here. On the sanctity of marriage, I think some things must be clarified. First, if a particular sect of religion, let's say Protestants, decide they want to acknowledge gay marriage, that is their choice and their prerogative. The same goes vice versa. If a particular sect does not... I lost my place. Shit. Let's say Protestants decide they want to decide they want to acknowledge gay marriage. That is their choice, their prerogative. The same goes vice versa. If a particular sect does not want to acknowledge gay marriage, fine, that's their choice and their prerogative. Thus, there's the conundrum. It comes from what people think this country, the United States, is. The government is founded by our founding fathers as a secularist nation, meaning we must separate church from state. That is why we created the United States, was to escape the British royal monarchy and a theocracy, which was based off of Catholicism. I have no problem with private institution like church saying no gays, but in legal terms, the state saying no poses a problem, and that has less to do with religion and more to do with power of attorney. That is inequality at its very definition. Fuck gay people, they don't matter because the Bible tells me to hate them, even though we live in a secularist country. Gay marriage isn't about religion. To me, it's about not letting a family member that's never loved you to steal your assets away from the person you love and spent your life with. I have seen this happen. So the government, not the church, should recognize the pair bonding due to legal issues like protecting assets. You can keep your religion and all the hate that it breeds. I would never say you have to like or love gay people. By all means, keep your hate. That is your prerogative. I would never... what is not within your right is to destroy or restrict someone because you simply don't like them. The only way I can truly rationalize ill will or treatment up to and including but not limited to imprisonment or death is if they pose some kind of threat to you or others, and homosexuals just don't do that. You might want to look at some ancient artifacts because homosexuality isn't going anywhere either. It exists within nature and it's been around in humans since we have had the ability to document it. In very crude drawings and paintings we have found all over the world that predate Christ. Of course, men and women are different biologically, and anyone who says they are not is an idiot. But I would say that it would seem your traditions are more important to you than what we discover about ourselves. Look up statistics on adultery and psychological studies they have done involving it. Look into genetics to find what the blueprint for life is. The human genome was cracked by a scientist who happens to be a Christian, if you didn't know. The blueprint for life is that of homogeneous chromosomes, XX. So basically the blueprint of life is that of a female. There are several species of lizards that exist and reproduce homosexually. They have no male counterpart, no XY chromosomes, only XX, so they exist only as female. Communism is bad. Yes, there are communists that live in the United States, as well as fascists and nihilists, atheists, pagans, about 1 million different flavors of Christianity, Jews, Muslims, anarchists, polygamists. Thank the Mormons for that one. Just a lot of different stuff. There's no problem with them being here as long as they are not hurting others. Anarchists can have, hold, or teach their views, but they cannot go around blowing up buildings or kill people who disagree with them. You should not be silenced for disagreeing, and the authoritarian left should stop, because I guarantee you, if they actually got what they were asking for, they would regret it. Same goes for the alt-right people. One last thing, change is inevitable. Societies are always changing and always have been. When something becomes stagnant, it starts to fester. And it is true, like this like sort of alt-right has a homogeny to it of like kind of Christian 1950s nuclear family-esque, picturesque idealism. So that really, like you have to understand, when Adolf Hitler wrote the Mein Kampf, it had homogeny as well as homogeneity in it. And then that's the problem. Okay, like that is a bad way of thinking. The authoritarians. It doesn't matter if you're a left-leaning authoritarian or a right-leaning authoritarian. If authoritarian is authoritarianism, it's where you're trying to control certain aspects of people's lives where it ceases to make any sense anymore. It's like you're just trying to say, this is the world I want to live in, and the world around me should reflect that. It's like, well, you can find people of like mind to be around that reflect the world you want to live in, but forcing other people to live your lifestyle is authoritarian. It is cultural Marxism. It is fascism under the definition of the people who wrote it. They would be very, very happy. I'm not saying this person is a Nazi. I'm not saying that they're a fascist. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that if they were to talk to one, they'd probably find that they have more in common with them than they really truly realize. Let's continue on.
I literally cannot read all of that. Debauchery and a hypersexualized society is indeed degenerative.
Alright, so we need to define what debauchery is. We need to define what degenerative is. These are highly subjective terms. Like, what I consider to be debauchery, what I consider to be degenerative, will be different than another person's. Let's just do like a quick search and see what the definitions for these are, so I can pinpoint this exactly. Definition of debauchery.
Debauchery means excessive indulgence in sensual pleasures.
All right, so hedonism, basically. And we all participate in various forms of hedonism. Definition of degenerative.
Degenerative means characterized by progressive, often irreversible deterioration and loss of function in the organs or tissues.
Well, that's a very scientific explanation. But degenerative, like, so a degenerative society, so it's tearing down society's walls or whatever. Like, so what do you think is tearing down, like, communism, cultural Marxism absolutely would, if it can get a footing. Like, you have people like Ocasio-Cortez that tried to pass that Green New Deal. That flopped flat on its ass, for good reason. So what I said in response to this was debauchery. You should go and read Benjamin Franklin and what he was up to. The truth is, if you want to be a patriot of the U.S., it is to be anti-authoritarian. That's what we fought against the British royal monarchy, which was controlled by theocracy, and why we have freedom of religion. That is not in the Bill of Rights. That's a part of the original Constitution created by the Founding Fathers. Seriously, though, read a biography about Benjamin Franklin's personal life. I would find it extremely funny if you were to call one of our Founding Fathers that helped write the Constitution an un-American or deplorable or degenerate of something of that nature, somebody who engaged in hedonism or debauchery, as you put it. In your opinion, hypersexualization is debauchery or degenerative. And the thing is that this comes down to personal responsibility. Me, as a liberal, I look at somebody who's being promiscuous and I say, well, it's your right to be promiscuous. But if you catch an STD, don't expect me to feel sorry for you, and don't start blaming and trying to play the victim, because you should know before you get into something like that what the ramifications are of being promiscuously sexually active. That comes with that territory. Take some fucking responsibility. It's the same as like cruising for sex on sex apps like Tinder and Grindr. It's like they're not selling sex to you. they're using your drive to have sex to sell something to you. So it's a demand. People will use it because we're sexual creatures. And it's your personal responsibility. If you do not want to partake in that lifestyle, it is up to you to make a conscious decision to say, I am not going to do that, and take some personal responsibility for it. That's up to you as the individual. That's not up to the government. That's not up to society to do it for you. That's up to you. I think prostitution should be legal. It's a viable business. There's certainly a market out there for it. It just creates criminals for no reason. And I'm sure that would be considered debauchery or degenerative, but it's like, if you personally feel that that is debauchery or degenerative, then don't participate in it. It's just that simple. It really is. It's that easy. And if you're tempted by it, that's not society's fault. That's not the government's fault. That's not the prostitute's fault. That's not the business of prostitution's fault. That's your fault for not having enough self-discipline. That's what we should be teaching kids, maybe, is self-discipline and having independent responsibility, or taking responsibility for one's actions. Owning up to those things. All right, let's go on to the next.
Do you know what the difference between actively promoting debauchery and being a flawed person is? I don't think you can legitimately tell me what it means to be an American. You are regurgitating my own personal philosophy of life in regards to overbearing authority. You are not understanding my perspective.
All right, so the difference between actively promoting debauchery and being a flawed person. Everyone is flawed. Anyone that says they're perfect is full of shit. I mean, this is one thing that I respect about the pagan religion over Christianity. Instead of, fire and brimstone, do as I say. Paganism does not believe in the aspect of good and evil. It's about everything, everyone. The gods, goddesses, deities, human beings, we're all equally capable of both good and bad things. They teach more of the principle of there is consequence for your actions, and that how much good or bad you do is ultimately what's going to end up defining you. But I can't sit around and think that if you say that, like, for instance, I would never promote unsafe sexual practices. I wouldn't. I am understanding of them. I'm not judgmental towards people who participate in unsafe sexual practices, like people who are promiscuous and don't wear condoms or use protection. I get it. I understand the allure of it, but like I said, when they get an STD, don't play the victim card with me. Don't say, oh my God, poor woe is me, I caught an STD, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to say, well, you knew that before going into it, so, take some responsibility. Own up. And you're going to have to accept the fact that now that you have an STD, there's a lot of people that are not going to want to sleep with you. And I expect somebody to be honest about that, and I think if you're not honest about it, I think that makes you a terrible person. And that's playing more on that bad side that's going to define you as a bad person. Most people, the majority of people, don't want to catch an STD. It's as simple as that. I don't understand why this is complicated. I think if somebody's going around saying, hey, go out and get HIV, I think that's definitely a bad thing now, isn't it? And to tell you what it means to be an American, being an American is a lot of things, but I don't identify as anything. I identify as an American. I'm not like I'm not sitting on my I'm not on my knees sucking America's dick and worshiping the flag, because I find that deep patriotism is dogmatic and disgusting, because you have to be able to step back from your country and say, is what my country is doing a good thing, not just for the people in it, but for others? Like, is this going to be like when Hitler rose to power, or the communism or the Soviet rose to power? I don't think anybody stepped back and said, is this going to leave a black mark on history, or is this a good thing? And if people were to have taken the time to actually do that and actually protest against it like they should have been doing, it would have been, things might have turned out different. So I mean, I don't know what else you would call me. I am an American. If I went over to Europe, they would identify me as an American. And technically, I have native blood, so I belong here. I mean, like, I don't know what else you want. I mean, I like freedoms. And this country is founded on a principle of freedoms, not authoritarianism. It's so written, actually. As C.R. Williams pointed out to me, I brought this up in another video, I'm going to bring it up again. The amendments, your amendment rights, the right to bear arms, free speech, all that, the first 5 are the first 5 liberties and freedoms that authoritarians always try to attack. They try to they try to silence you. They try to censor you. They try to take away any means of resistance. They do all these things so that they can establish some sort of dictatorship power. So I think I do know what it means to be an American. I have looked into this. And regurgitating your own personal philosophy on... So I guess then we agree on stuff like that. And I'm glad that I'm glad that you're against an overbearing authority. But I don't think you've reflected on some of the things that you've said and how authoritarian they really are. To say things that, like, homosexuality, let's say, for instance, or hypersexuality is degenerative, you're telling somebody at that point that they cannot engage in hedonism, and that is authoritarian. It's like, not everybody wants to live the, Victorian-esque 1950s nuclear family puritanical lifestyle. That's not for everyone. Maybe that's for you, but that's not for everyone. And just because that's not for everyone, that's not a sign of a deterioration of a society. Let's move on to the next one, then.
What I am trying to tell you is that it is not constructive to live in a society that actively promotes drug use, debauchery, irresponsibility, and hypersexuality. A lack of personal responsibility, broken families, irresponsible or dangerous sex. I could go on. I am not telling you that some iron fist should crack down and force everyone to conform. I am telling you that there is a specific motivation by sick individuals to corrupt the core values of this nation for money and power. Marxism and the Frankfurt School are not conspiracy theory. It is factual history, just like gravity and inertia. Regardless of who is responsible for this, we should be promoting the opposite of what we currently promote across all media forms. You can't tell me that there has not been a drastic shift between what sort of media is consumed today and what was consumed 70 or 80 years ago. You think multi-billion-dollar corporations create media that is accidental? You presume spontaneity where there is intent.
Alas, yes, I agree with you at the very end. That's what we call cronyism. And I'll tell you this, cronyism will lead to a different type of dictatorship that is something different. And I've been looking into this recently. I actually been posting about it on my other social medias. if we continue to let the elite, the top 1%, keep calling the shots, and even going above government legislation, which is done through a democratic process, yes, we live in a constitutional republic. A republic is basically the perfected version of a democracy. Democracy is the prototype to republic. We live in a democratic society. It is won by the power of the people's vote. The people that we elect are supposed to represent us. All right? All right. But anyway, I'm not going to debate those semantics with you. Just please don't. I understand the difference. Okay? Can we not debate the semantics of that? So, actively promote drug use, debauchery, irresponsible hypersexuality, blah, 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 blah. Are you saying that a person can't have an adult-oriented, centered media? Because that's kind of weird. I mean, some of these things that you're saying the media is presenting, they shouldn't be. And it's like, well, if it's geared towards an adult audience, it's very appropriate because a lot of that contains conflict and stuff that we experience in our everyday life that we don't necessarily intend on experiencing, but shit happens. Life is not perfect. Life is not made out of Nerf. I mean, you're never going to obtain some society where you don't get some kind of, like, something that happens like this. Like, I mean, I've engaged in hypersexuality before. I regretted it afterwards, but that tells me that's not for me. That's not something I feel comfortable doing. But I'm not going to shame someone else for doing it, and I'm not going to tell them that they're a bad person. That doesn't mean that I don't like consuming media that talks about like movies that actively promote drug use and hypersexuality. Things like Sin City. That was a damn good movie. Are you saying we shouldn't create content like that? It has to be done with the concept in mind that this is, it's a movie. They're not encouraging you to do this stuff in real life. It's just like, there's other things too where it's like shit like this happens. I mean, like, like Brokeback Mountain, that shit fucking happens. Like, especially you go back to the 1950s when it takes place. Shit like that actually happened to people. So, I mean, it's a story of our lives, of humanity in general. And, I mean, to sort of censor that out and be like, no, that might corrupt people's minds. That is authoritarian. That is authoritative. It very much is. And I'm going to reiterate this. I know Marxism and the Frankfurt School are not conspiracy theories. I know that. I'm saying that what certain right-leaning people are calling cultural Marxism isn't. Saying that women should be able to compete in the workplace is not cultural Marxism. It's not. I made a video about what cultural Marxism is, where I actually read I read through the manifesto of Gramsci, the guy who invented cultural Marxism, and there's none of that shit in there. This is the aspect of, like, saying, hey, we aren't on equal footing here. Like, I'm not for privileges. I'm not, like, saying women should just make more money because they're women. That's a bullshit argument. That's fucked. I personally have never promoted any of these things that you're talking about, but even if I did, it's almost like you're telling me I can't have a channel that's oriented towards adults that face very adult-oriented issues. I have no problem talking about drug use. I have used drugs, and I can tell you the negative ramifications of using them. I would advise people against certain drugs, particularly the hard ones like methamphetamine and heroin. I could talk about those from personal experience, from stats, data, and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, if somebody wants to use those things, I can't stop them. There's plenty of people out there that are Christians, probably good Christians or whatever, that get sucked into it as well. And it's not from media saying, you need to go out and do this. I think if you were to actually talk to a junkie, they'd tell you not to do it because it has made their life horrific and horrible. So I don't understand this. Like, if somebody's going to go around telling kids to do heroin, I think that that's a fucked up individual, and they need to probably be stopped. But, I mean, if you're talking about somebody that's going around talking about using heroin to adults, that's a different concept altogether. And if you're telling me that the population is that stupid, that they're going to be that much of a follower and not pay attention to any other, contrarian to that argument, then we've got a big problem with the education system in the United States. It has completely failed. So I have a big problem with that. But if we don't stop crony capitalism, what we will end up with is a group of people that control the say. So, let's say, the top 1% will basically control all the legislation that our government passes. You know what they call that? It's called an oligarchy. It's not a patriarchy, it's an oligarchy. And they've happened before. And it's really important that the right and the left work together to make sure that that does not happen. Because right now, as it is, if Facebook wanted to, let's say, damage a bunch of people's bodies and then pay the government off to get away with it, that basically means they are above law, order, justice, and due process. They are above it. They can create laws. They are above the law. They are above the justice system. Justice is no longer blind. That is an oligarchy. That is an authoritarian government. And we don't want that. That's probably more eminent than communism. That is an oligarchy, though. That's not cultural Marxism. That's not communism. That's not even fascism. That is called an oligarchy. I'd say monarchy because monarchy is associated with the high prestige ruling class. Like the richest are the rulers, but usually in a monarchy they're one ruler. But in an oligarchy, you have a very small group of people controlling the rest of the population. So you've got the top 1% controlling 99% of the American populace and the legislations that are passed. That is an oligarchy. And I would also I like how C.R. Williams put in here. He said, Jinx he's never heard me promote any of this nor say anything that would give an endorsement to anyone who would. And that's true. I mean, I try to keep it rational here and realistic. Realistically, you're not going to get rid of prostitution. You're not going to get rid of hedonism. People are going to smoke cigarettes. People are going to do drugs. People are going to have sex. People are going to have gay sex. These things are going to happen, whether you like it or not. And the thing is to tell them that they can't, say that they should be silenced, that's a form of censorship. That is authoritarian. You're suggesting that the ends, or to fix this problem of the oligarchy is with basically like a Christo-fascist agenda. A different, like, replace one system of authoritarianism with another system of authoritarianism. I am a liberal. That means I'm for liberties. I am for freedom. I want more freedom, less restriction. I'm a communal anti-authoritarian. Meaning power to the fucking people, bitch. So, that being said, there was also a video that you made that I wanted to go over because I found it very interesting. Because once again, we get into something called the Homo Global Agenda. Alright. But I'm going to stop this video here. And I want you to go and in here, look at this. Definition of oligarchy.
Oligarch means a ruler in an oligarchy.
No. Definition of oligarchy.
Oligarchy means a small group of people having control of a country, organization, or institution.
There you go. So I think that's a problem. And yeah, so I agree with you about crony capitalism, and it needs to stop. But, you know, some of the things I think that you're conflating with crony capitalism have more to do with people not taking personal responsibilities for their actions. A company has the right to sell cupcakes, ho-hos, and Twinkies, but it's ridiculous when somebody blames the company because they're fat and they can't control themselves when eating said things. But I will leave you to your thoughts. You can like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Hit the bell button on any channel you're subscribed to. And I mean no disrespect to this person. This is an interesting debate. And I have a lot of respect for this person, actually. I've been kind of talking to them for a bit of time now. But, again, let me like, share, subscribe, comment, hit bell button, blah, 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 all that good shit. I'm out.